Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abe Karar and I'm a partner at Fintech Galaxy. I am very excited to be here with you today and to have the pleasure of presenting the Yalla Fintech Ask Me Anything session focused on Fintech disrupting MENA. Will it solve the $1 billion question? Yalla Fintech is the Arab world's digital hackathon and innovation challenge, and is focused on boosting collaboration and novel solutions that will make a difference for financial inclusion. And this session is really focused on establishing the dialogue with the sector innovators to help them understand the development objectives and to promote their participation. So I'd like to start off by inviting Haidar al-Baghdadi, who is the head of Project for Financial Inclusion in MENA at GIZ. And he will provide us some insights and elaborate on this initiative, the motivations and the reasons for GIZ to be supporting the implementation of Yalla Fintech. Haidar, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Yeah, first of all, I would like to say thank you to all participants that you have taken your time to join this exciting hour, which is now ahead of us. And please allow me to say thank you very much to our partner, Fintech Galaxy, for joining the forces, joining hands to advance financial inclusion and Fintech development here in the region. I'm not sure if everybody knows, actually, GIZ, German International Corporation, actually, we are a public enterprise. We work on behalf of the German government, and we have projects all over the world, have been working all over the world for many decades on many different topics. One of the topics is sustainable development or sustainable economic development. And actually capacity development is at the core as what we do on behalf of the German Development Corporation. If we look at the MENA region or the Arab world, we actually also have a very long track record. As GIZ, we have also a very long track record in terms of financial systems development and microfinance and later financial inclusion. If we look at the MENA region, we have been supporting the region in terms of financial systems development or financial inclusion or microfinance, however you would like to call it, for more than 10 or 15 years. Actually, we started with a regional program. I'm the head of this regional program, but we also have many bilateral projects, you know, like in Tunisia, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Palestine, Morocco, and so forth. And I mean, when we started with our regional program, like 10 or 12 years ago, we worked mainly on the policy level. So we worked with central banks like in Jordan, Palestine, and Egypt to help central banks to develop a regulatory and supervisory framework for microfinance and also legal basis for microfinance in these countries. If we look at the region now, most of the countries now, they have actually a legal framework for microfinance. And that's why we also evolved further with our regional program. We started, I would say, like 5-6 years ago. We supported the Central Bank of Jordan and also again Palestine and Egypt to develop a national strategy for financial inclusion. And I'm also very happy that we have the Central Bank of Jordan today with us, Ahmad, because the Central Bank of Jordan was kind of a pioneer in being the first country issuing a national strategy for financial inclusion in the Arab world, and then other countries actually follow suit. I said that we also have bilateral projects in the region. We work very closely together with the bilateral project, and we in this project we do not only work with the central banks and the policy makers, but we work with the whole ecosystem of the financial sector. That means with financial service providers, with fintech companies, but also with startups and so forth. Having said that, I mean, I think most of you still know that, and it's a well-known fact that financial inclusion is still very high on the agenda of the Arab world. Unfortunately, I have to say, despite so many progresses we have seen in the recent past, not only on the policy, but also on the industry level, if we look at financial inclusion figures, the Arab world is still the region with the highest exclusion level worldwide. So we still have 301 million unbanked individuals or citizens in the MENA. And if we look at the enterprise level, SMEs, we have a finance gap when it comes to SMEs of $130 billion finance gap in the region. Or if you want to translate it into percent, that means that 85%, almost 85% of the finance needs are unmet in the region when it comes to SMEs. At the same time, we also see, and that's why we also have this hackathon, we see the digital transformation in the financial sector in many countries. There's the digital transformation of the entire sector, but also financial service providers. And I think this digital transformation really holds promise to narrow this finance gap we just talked about. I mean, we have a very promising examples that started already like 10, 15 years ago in East Africa, that through mobile money, that actually financial sector have been really revolutionized. But now it really looks like, it feels like this is the past. Now we talk about big tech and fintech and blockchain and auction platforms, online platforms, e-commerce and so forth. And that's why we are very happy to actually promote this development in the region further. And we are very proud to, as I said, to work together with Fintech Galaxy to have the first of this kind of event. It's a regional hackathon where we bring the whole ecosystem together online. I think it's really a challenge to bring it together online. That's why it's the first of its kind, to have it regionally with all the ecosystems. And we have identified actually 3 topics that we would like to promote and to promote solutions to really narrow down the finance gap. So one is digital lending. We know that lending is a big issue for MSMEs. What I said, the funding gaps, there are so many obstacles SMEs or MSMEs are facing when it comes to collateral, availability of data and so forth. So here we are really seeking for solutions for actually digital lending. The other one is digital financial awareness. We also know for many countries that the level of financial awareness and also financial capabilities, that there is room for improvement. That's why we also look for digital, or that we look for solutions to raise digital financial awareness. And last but not least, we also have the innovation challenge. We're very happy about that, about electronic know your customer, EKYC for simplified customer onboarding. So these are the 3 topics. We want to bring the ecosystem together, the regulators, the financial service providers, the tech companies, the startups, to really work together on solutions to advance financial inclusion in the region. And this is a kickoff today. I'm super excited. It's great. I heard there are more than 80 people now on that webinar on Zoom. And this is just a kickoff, and I'm wishing all of us exciting days, exciting month that are ahead of us. And once again, thank you everybody for making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haidar. That was very insightful. And definitely we at Fintech Galaxy feel just as excited, and we feel honored to be in partnership with GIZ and to be in service of the MENA region and helping our communities within the Arab countries. So what I'd like to do next, ladies and gentlemen, is I just want to take 5 minutes to describe the process and just to share some key dates so everybody's on the same page. And then I will introduce our esteemed panel and we'll take it from there. So as you can all see on my screen, the registration kicked off on October 20th, and the main objective here was to allow the tech startups operating in the Arab region. You'll have to have a team of minimum 2 people and looking to submit ideas to tackle the issues along the themes that that were shared. The other, and just to focus again, this is the digital lending, the digital KYC, and the digital financial awareness. After that, we have the second key date is November 19th, where the registration deadline, where 10 teams will be shortlisted for the first round of screening. After that, November 26th, there will be an announcement of the finalists. These are 5 teams that will be chosen to take part in Hack Week. And during this milestone, there will be a sample pitch deck that will be shared with the participants, so then they could prepare the content for the final pitch off. December 8th is when the Hack Week takes place. And here the finalists are committed to actively participate during the hackathon preparation and implementation. During that time frame, there will be 4 days of workshops and sessions to really build up the team's pitch deck, to provide them, guidance and mentorship, and really help them, solidify their business model, understand how they're going to scale up their solutions, understand how they're going to position it for investors, and really get to a point where they could stand in front of the judges and present. And that brings us to the final date, which is December 15th, which is the pitch competition and the winner's announcement. And because this is an event, again, that's happening virtually, the actual scoring happens in real time, and the judges are doing that electronically. And they're looking really across the 5 key criteria, which is technology, innovation, relevance, feasibility, presentation, and data. 6 criteria. And then by the end of the session, the winners will be announced. So with that said, I'd like to take a pause, and I'd like to just invite our esteemed panelists. The panel will be moderated by Nadine Chehade. She comes from the World Bank. She's a senior financial sector specialist. Very excited and happy to have Nadine with us. And then the panel members are Ahmad, the head of the Financial Inclusion Division at the Central Bank of Jordan, Dr.Ayman Ismail, the founding director of the AUC Venture Lab, Basil Moftah, the general partner at Global Ventures, and Atilla Yucel, the advisor at GIZ. So with that said, I'd like all of the panel members to please turn on your cameras. And Nadine, the floor is all yours.
Thanks a lot, Abed. I hope everyone sees me. I think so. And I hope everybody hears me as well. So my name is Nadine Chehade. I cover the Arab world for CGAP, we're a think tank. We're focused on financial inclusion. And I've been covering the region for a little while. And I have the pleasure to have met a number of the people on this call, including some of my esteemed panelists. I think our objective is to essentially frame a little bit the debate, but also open up quite a bit the space for questions from the audience and from the fintechs themselves. So, I mean, just to frame a little bit what we're going to be discussing in a minute. Clearly, for the past 10 years, we've seen digital financial services being more and more digitized to the extent that technology at this stage is reshaping the entire financial sector. So in countries like the ones in our region, sorry, I'm being asked to start my video. I thought my video was on. So anyhow, there's 2 of me, one for my audio and one for my video. And so in markets like a number of ones in the Arab world, where, as Haidar mentioned, the presence of financial services is far from being ubiquitous. We have practically 70% of adults that do not have access to an account, 20 million micro, small, and medium enterprises that are either unbanked or underserved, just cannot meet their financing needs, the infamous 85% that Haidar mentioned. So there's a real question in our region more than any other one practically about how that digital future will look like. So you add COVID-19 and obviously that has both accelerated the uptake of digital financial services, but also increased inequalities. So the big questions for development experts like us, who work a lot on deepening the financial sectors and making those financial services reach the ones who have lower incomes, the real question is like, how can everyone, be it individuals or companies, be better served through those digital financial services? So the past, I say, couple of years, practically, we've been very closely following the development of digital financial services, and we've led a study landscaping fintechs across the Arab world in collaboration with our EY colleagues, and I saw that some of them were on the call. So great to have you here as well. And so one of the big conclusions, not only that we have a very vibrant ecosystem, is that just by reaching 50% of the untapped market in just 6 countries on which we focused, and those are UAE, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Lebanon, Jordan, just 50% of individuals and SMEs, we have a $7 billion revenue potential. And for that, obviously, you need investment, but we're speaking fraction of investment and huge potential. And that's, of course, without the economic development gains and the jobs that are created. So let me turn first to Dr. Ayman, because you've been a long-term expert in entrepreneurship and economic development. So let me ask, the first question to you, looking at those, fintechs, we've counted, I think at this stage, it's over 370 of them. What, in your opinion, should those fintechs do to maximize their impact?
Thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you, everybody. And I'm very happy that we have a lot of people who are interested actually in pushing the agenda on the fintech side and in starting companies. And the entrepreneurs with us are actually the ones who are going to lead this movement. So that's the most important thing. Look, a couple of 3 points to focus on. If we want to have a lot of fintech that's happening in our region, then the first thing that we need to have is a regulatory infrastructure. And I think several years ago, most of the regulatory infrastructure in the region was very primitive, was very basic. They were not prepared for digital payments, for many of the infrastructure issues that are associated with it. And over the last few years, we've seen a lot of central banks jump in and regulators jump in to upgrade and update the regulatory infrastructure. And that is a huge thing. It acts as an enabler. For example, in Egypt, we had a new central bank law that included a full chapter on digital payments. And that's very important that it actually puts it in a formal legal framework that allows us to get there. We're having a new fintech law that's coming that's going to allow new use cases and applications, and we're really looking forward to it. We've had regulations for the consumer lending part that was issued a few months ago, and this is great. We also had regulations for data protection, privacy, which is extremely important when you have an industry like the financial services. We're having an SME law that is trying to bring a lot of the small and medium companies from the informal sector to formalize, and part of that is actually bringing them to the payment part, which is extremely important for the state for taxation, but also for the rest of the economy. That kind of package that we've seen in Egypt over the past 2 or 3 years is extremely important in laying the foundation. So that's number one. Number two is for us to have people using financial technology, we need a payment infrastructure, a digital payment infrastructure. So we're cash societies, we're informal societies, and that's dominant in the whole region. And now we're starting to see a lot of the digital payment infrastructure coming in. In Europe and the US, they went the credit card path, and they started for several decades ago. So all of them took that path. China went the mobile wallet path, and we see WeChat and Alipay and all of that dominating. And I think our part of the world is kind of trying to figure out which path we're going to take. And now it's more of hybrid between both. We're seeing a lot of push for cards, but we're also seeing a lot of push for mobile wallets and many other products. But without having a payment infrastructure where people can pay and can accept digital transactions, we cannot get to the next level. In Egypt, we're starting now, I think we have about 16 million mobile wallets. We're starting to see more of them being active and being used. We're seeing more proliferation of credit cards and point of sale machines for acceptance. And this is fantastic. Now, let's build on top of that. we can focus on what people call the issuance side. Let's issue cards for everybody. And we've done that in Egypt several years ago when the government gave everybody their salary through debit cards. We had a lot of people, actually, I think if I remember the number correctly, more than 10 million people, 11 or 12 million people with debit cards. But people used to line up in front of the ATM machine, get their salary in cash and move back to the cash. So it became just a nice teller replacement. But what are people going to do with these cards or wallets? We want to see more use cases, more applications. So let's move to the next level. And the next level is the interesting part actually for the entrepreneurs here, because those are the ideas that build on the infrastructure that we have, regulatory and payment infrastructure. So now we have consumer lending. And consumer financing, people buying products on installments or people wanting to borrow different amounts, whether secured or unsecured. We're starting to see SME lending. So those are for enterprises that are looking for working capital financing or that are looking for capital investments, small amounts usually. And some of these are coming from nano lending organizations, microfinance organizations that are looking to get into the digital part. We're seeing other products like micro-insurance products, leasing, factoring products that people are looking at it. We're seeing the integration of all of these things into different variations of offerings. In Egypt, we have companies like NowPay, Khazna, Chehade that are starting to get into that space. And I see investors having an appetite and government actually having a support. So now the most important part in the next period is going to be giving and putting more use cases, applications for consumers, whether individuals or SMEs, to actually make their life better. People always look at the kind of the financial services industry as the industry that wants to partner with me in my profit. They want the 2 or 3% transaction fee and my profit margin is 10%. Those guys are taking 30% of my profitability. What value are you adding? And this is the challenge for everybody here. Can you add value to the people and to the SMEs that corresponds to taking that much money out of their thin profit margin? If you can do that, that's great. Then you have a product and the market's going to love you, investors are going to love you, customers are going to love you, governments are going to love you. But if you don't manage to create that value, do not expect that the market is going to accept your presence and that the consumers are going to say, yeah, I want to go digital because it's fashionable and I'm willing to sacrifice that much money. That's not going to happen. Cash is great because it is cheap and it adds value. And unless you're able to offer a real value proposition, do not expect people to jump into the wagon of the digitalization or digital payments. So this is a challenge for everybody on the call. Can you create real value for consumers and for SMEs that they're willing to pay for happily? If you can do that, then you're going to do very well. Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, Ayman. That was an excellent summary and a very good pitch for whoever is listening to us to do their best to bring in that value. And 100% agree with the fact that we have not always seen that value in the recent past. Let me turn to you, Basil. You bring in that investor perspective coming from a venture firm. And so I'd like to hear from you, from your point of view. There's a lot of opportunity, as we mentioned, in this region. Is it that what you're looking for as an investor? Do you find enough solutions that bring those sort of value added for you to invest in?
Thanks, Nadine, and thanks, Dr. Ayman, for that great answer. I think you covered everything, so we're kind of done. Let's move on, right? Now, I'm going to try to add a little bit to it and kind of give a slightly different perspective. First of all, what's happened clearly for the last the last few years in terms of the number of fintechs and the number of entrepreneurs is wonderful. And I think we've seen an explosion kind of opportunities and so on. As investors, though, we're always looking and balancing between two things, right? One is the business focused enough to solving a problem and solving it well? I think Dr. Ayman talked about the side of the cost and the side of kind of, can you really add value but make it economic for the for the consumer or for the business? But I also think about it from a user experience point of view. Are you making it easier? Is the product easy to use? how difficult or simple are you building? And believe it or not, to simplify things is not simple. I mean, so many people built transfer wallets, right? Or remittance wallets or so on. But if you look at like Venmo and what they did in the US and how simple they made that product, it's that simplicity that and the use case of friends going out for dinner and they want to split the bill, and this is the easiest way to split the bill. Their ability to do that in a simple way is what gave them the basis of the business, and then they built on. I see many entrepreneurs who walk into our doors and kind of they want to boil the ocean. They want to try to do everything. They want to cover lending and this and this and this, and I'm going to do savings and credit card and payment and wallet. And it's kind of like you're not going to be able to do any single one of those things well enough to make it add value. You're just going to build a mediocre product. And I think, you know, to this to Fintech Galaxy and the initiative around these hackathons and building solutions, look to build something from a user experience, from a customer experience is superior than what others have. And obviously, you know, do what Dr.Ayman said, which is make it something that makes economic sense. That is not to be underestimated. The challenge on the other side is when you do something very focused, is the market big enough, right? How many customers can you get? How many users can you get? Do I go into one country or multiple country? Do I do one country with multiple products, or do I do several countries with one product? There's a lot of options to think about. I would say as competition heats up, as the entrepreneurs, you know, innovate and build, doing one thing really well in multiple countries is a really winning strategy in our opinion. It doesn't mean you can't do multiple things, but make sure that you have a core USP that your customers or users can differentiate you for. And that's what, you know, investors, at least ourselves, are looking for.
Thanks a lot, Basil. Let me turn to you, Ahmad. You're the regulator in the room. So Jordan has done a number of things over the past few years. But all in all, as Ayman said initially, I mean, regulation remains a big bottleneck, and those pathways to innovations we have not yet seen at scale in this region. And so very curious to hear from you, you know, what are the remaining challenges, you know, and where is the further room for improvement on the regulatory side? Over to you.
Thank you, Nadine. And I'm really excited to be on this panel and participate in this great initiative, actually, with Fintech Galaxy. I think, Dr. Ayman, you should be a policymaker here in this room too. I think you and Basil as well, you tackled really like the main core actually of challenges as policymakers and what we look at usually. And as we all witness currently, we're going through historic economic challenges. And yet, ironically, we still see opportunities coming up, especially for the digitization and digital financial services in general. Now, it's historical times even for central banks because we're experimenting as well with the market. And I think from my own perspective, I think it's a learning process as well, even for the regulator. That's why we've taken different approaches. One of them, as an example, in the Central Bank of Jordan, we launched our regulatory fintech sandbox for two purposes. First is to touch base with the market, see what's exactly needed and how. On the second hand, two is to amend regulations and see what are, because we've been working on conventional side of central banking, and it's a mind shift actually. So, but again, we believe that the private sector as well and investing in propelling innovation in this side will actually drive regulation too, and that's why we're experimenting actually, and that's why the hackathon and the challenge innovation tackles really very important aspects, which is for the hackathon, digital lending is one of the main things that we look at to make it more feasible and reasonable for people to access credit. Again, as you said, many of our population, particularly in Jordan, more than 50% lack bank accounts or access to formal financial services. Now, there's plenty of room for development and for regulatory amendments here. I think one of the main issues is digital banking and open banking, actually open APIs that can allow innovation and cutting cost actually for innovators and for investors at the same time, in order to invest and create more, add something to the value chain as well. Again, this comes with from our perspective too, as a regulator, we need more development in cybersecurity and data protection, which at the end of the day transfers to the end user, and data privacy and access at a very safe and easy manner to financial inclusion. Now, add to the cost issue. I think cutting cost for the end user is one of the things that makes things more feasible. And again, what we look at is economic growth in general is what we look at in order to serve our population properly. So consumer protection measures as well, and transparency is one of other things that needs development. However, I think this is a great initiative, and I'm actually glad to be on the to participate in this in the hackathon and the challenge fund, because enhancing eKYC will work on two sides actually, for the supply and the demand side. It will cut cost for the financial institution or the provider as well, in order to assess and give credit in a very time relevant way, and at the same time it will cut cost on the end user. Again, this all is testing our current regulations. However, again, I think it's great to leverage and to seize this opportunity that us as central banks, it's inevitable that we need to go this transformation. It's not a matter of, it's not luxury anymore. So I think leveraging on such initiatives will support us actually looking what regulations really need. Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you, Ahmad. I feel we should clone you and put you in every country across this world. We'd have a more innovative world, that's for sure. Let me turn to you, Atilla. We've been speaking about not leaving people behind, and so yeah, we're speaking financial services, we're speaking digitization and deepening those sectors to get more economic development. I'm curious to hear, from your perspective, what is it that makes a fintech inclusive per se? Over to you.
Thank you, Nadine. And I think you have the answer, Nadine, from your great research before. But let me actually pick up a point or a couple of points, great points that we've heard earlier from Ayman, Basil, and Ahmad. I think so. What I heard is, the question, can you add value? And so Ayman also mentioned the example that salaries have been digitized, and then people, went ahead and cash it out, or just didn't keep using their account. So what I want to say is this: when we measure financial inclusion, access to finance, or when we look at digitizing financial services, we focus much on accounts, but actually I think we must not leave the specific needs of the majority out there out of sight. I think it's fair to say that a large amount of people, actually the majority out there, is exposed to a fair bit amount of uncertainty over income, over cash flow, uncertainty over, of course, shocks. So the majority of the unbanked people, actually, we notice from field research, if you want to look it up, you can read the financial diaries, for example, that people have dealt or have learned to deal with these uncertainties, given that they don't really have the financial services that help them deal with it. So things like mental accounting, for example, assigning, coping with the savings that you have for specific purposes. So I guess what I want to say with that is that, again, amplifying what Ayman said, for greater use of financial services, we must really think about useful use cases. So supporting the specific needs of the unbanked majority that are actually very well in money management matters, but that need the appropriate services in order to be better off. So this is also why we see, for example, Jamaiya, rotating savings and credit associations performing so well. They're informal services, but they're really, they cater with the specific needs of many people. So enabling to save together, enabling to have access to liquidity when needed, and so on and so forth. And we know from research that 23 million people in Arab countries actually use these Jamaiya savings accounts. So I think what I want to say, Nadine, is the first thing is that for fintech to be inclusive, the service really needs to be appropriately customized to the majority of people that are unbanked. And that means providing real value and building on trust. So measuring or benchmarking themselves against high data privacy and security concerns. And second of all, for fintech to be inclusive, I think it's fair to say that the service also needs to be affordable. We know for many people, the formal or old financial services are too expensive, or people don't have the minimum balance requirements. So this is about being inclusive means being able to manage a large volume of low value transactions and balances. And third and lastly, I think for fintech to be inclusive, simply spoken, the service needs to be accessible, right? So when it comes to smartphone use, user friendliness, customer experience, but also to the onboarding experience.
Thanks a lot, Atilla. I can only concur to that idea of, again, value added that is brought to people's lives. And I think what we've seen lately with the introduction of microfinance, for instance, in the United States, which is an advanced country, you see that in some countries, which is that beneficial, but maybe people benefit, but you don't see business income growing as much as you would have hoped. But you see that tangible impact on liquidity, on the fact that people are more hopeful, are less stressed about managing their day-to-day lives. And I think that's a big difference that's being made. And this is the sort of small changes, but that at a macroeconomic level essentially allow people to do a lot more with their time and can drive more economic development at the lower end of the pyramid. Let me turn back to you, Ahmad, since we've been speaking a little bit about the pandemic that has had a number of effects. We thought it would be a shock and they would pass on, but we're likely to see it, lasting in time. Not too clear until when. And putting the people we care about, those unbanked, those underserved citizens, in focus. What is the type of support that you would expect, the fintechs for whom you're enabling a lot of things in Jordan? What is the type of support that you expect them to bring to their clients?
Well, first of all, Nadine, I urge them to be more consumer-centric, actually, and go through and put themselves into the consumer's shoes. And go through the journey day to day and see where they can add. It's not fashionable to follow technology. We believe in technology. That's where we're all going. However, if it does not really solve a problem, or it does not reflect any impact on day-to-day operations of humans, then it's not feasible. So I urge them again to be more consumer centric and to look at on use cases. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. We already have, and I can speak on the behalf of Central Bank and the Jordanian infrastructure, but again, in the region as well, we're developing in terms of payment infrastructure and financial infrastructure in general. However, don't reinvent the wheel and focus more on be very focused in your products and try to add more value. And look on how to actually cut cost, or actually to add value on the cost side for both, for businesses and for the consumer. At the end of the day, you're going to add something new, which again, use cases. How do we make people adopt digital financial services if they don't see any, if it does not save them anything, it's not very convenient. So I'd ask them to look at that and provide this type of support. However, financial literacy is a very, very critical issue in our region as well. I think it's a uh, uh, cross-cutting topic, and I think to focus more on how to deliver, how to be transparent and deliver financial literacy messages in a very innovative way that can reach people and support them in doing so. And my last point is to be more inclusive. Again, as we talked at the beginning of this discussion, we focus more on our, from a regulator perspective too, on our vulnerable groups. That's where it's not only where we look at them, how to support them and support their means of making their life easier. Again, it's another business opportunity, so it's a win-win situation. So be more inclusive. We have for youth, women, and refugees. So look at each segment and try to tailor your products as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. I know you will have to leave at some point of time, so don't worry when you actually have to do that. You can just do so. And to the people listening to us, please feel free to continue sending your questions in the chat box. I'd like to pick that idea that both you, Amir, and Atilla mentioned around adding value, and go back to you, Basil. That really goes back to one of the two elements that you mentioned. Investors look at the value added and the simple user experience. So I'd like to ask you, what is the sort of advice that you actually give entrepreneurs who come to you with the sort of, wanting to do everything sort of proposition?
Don't do it. That's the advice. It's simple. I mean, listen, I think it goes to the basics of how you build businesses. It goes to the basics of how you build competitive advantage and so on. You need to corner the market on one proposition. You need to be strong in one area and be well known for it, because if you're kind of the jack of all trades and the master of none, others will eat away at you very, very rapidly, and you won't be competitive in the market. And I know that it's counterintuitive sometimes, in the sense of wanting to build a full solution and wanting to address all the problems. But what you're really looking to do is to have a very loyal customer base. That loyal customer base reduces over time your overheads. It is able to be a repeat customer that generates revenue, let's say, incremental revenue on a per transaction basis or whatever. And as you build that loyal base, you'll be able to use some of those profits to invest in new products and build new other things. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't have an ambitious plan, and don't limit yourself, but it's kind of like, know where you're going to start, and be really, really cognizant of the fact that today there are lots of players, lots of people building these consumer bases. You want to own one and have an edge on it before you take on competition in other areas. I'll just give an example, because it's kind of a hot topic in the market these days, which is the buy now, pay later proposition, right? There's lots of people talking about buy now, pay later, but you have players who have been doing this for quite a while, right? There's a player in Egypt that's been doing it for 7 years, and only in the last 3 or 6 months have you really seen them accelerate. And they're a very well-funded player, right? They're Value, who's kind of a subsidiary of EFG. These guys have got enough capital to work at this problem, but it took them a while to own that base. Now that they own that proposition, they can do so much more with it. They can take that customer and cross-sell it and offer other solutions, not just buy now, pay later, but lending products and other things that go along alongside it. And you bet you they're going to do that now, right? And without even having to check their latest website, I'm sure they're already thinking about it, if not proposing it. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, one of the sectors that we don't really love is kind of the neo-banking sector. And the reason why we don't really love the neo-banking sector is it has this idea of, I'm going to be a bank. I'm going to do everything online and customers are going to come flock to me. It's kind of like, well, I get it. I get that you want to do that, but tell me what's unique about you? What is it that I can't buy? You know, or what is it that a regular bank cannot implement, or what is it that another fintech will not be able to do? And you realize that you end up talking about specific features or specific products that make the difference. So I know I'm being repetitive, but I can't emphasize it more. Fintech is about equal amount of speed to execution, but also the quality. And I think we've touched on that point several times on this call. So I think the topics that have been selected for this hackathon are right on, you know, verification, literacy, so on, are right on point for what's needed next. And those are really areas where clearly nobody has solved it and has it solved it well, but those of the people who can solve it elegantly are the ones that will do best.
I like the elegance factor around all of that. So we're running slightly behind time. I hope we can get a few extra minutes with our audience, but let me turn back to you, Ayman. Coming back on this idea of saying, you know, we have to focus on one area. But when you look at the big tech companies, they're entering financial services big time with payments, with, you know, buy now, pay later, etc. So, you know, what are we talking about? Is that like an overpromise, or are they going to take over all of our markets, or can we still see some, you know, homegrown fintech solutions bringing their value added? Over to you.
This is a very important question, Nadine. And I had this discussion actually with different people recently on, is fintech a local or a global market? And I think that's a very challenging question. So 3 points again. One, from the big player perspective, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Apple, all of those people, the problem is that their valuation is based on a very rapid and aggressive level of growth. They have exhausted the markets that they're in, whatever that market is, whether it's enterprise software or search market or mobile telephony. And they are looking for adjacent markets that would provide them with the new level of growth that their valuation is predicated on. If they fail in getting into those adjacent markets, their valuations is going to go substantially down because they're going to be on a flat curve in their traditional market. So now they are desperate to get into other markets. Payments and fintech is the next big adjacent market. And by the way, education, edtech is the other big market that they're getting into. Those two markets are huge and they're going to get into and try to disrupt. In China, the WeChat and Alipay, they got into the payment market very early and they were smart. And now WeChat is not a chat application, it's a payment application. Facebook was very late into getting into that space. They tried to do that in a grandiose way and it completely failed. They tried to do it in a small way, like getting into specific countries like in Brazil, and then the central bank shut them after they actually announced it. Very embarrassing. So it gets us to the second point. Financial markets, if you look at it right now, look at Egypt, Jordan, Emirates, Saudi, you're going to find two things. You'll find the Visa and the MasterCard and the Western Union, global players, and then you're going to find the local banks and the local banks, and they will remain local banks. They might be regional banks, or there might be a branch for a Citibank or the like, but it's also regulated and operating as a local bank that is completely separate from the global bank. So if you're trying to look at the global part, the question is, what is the value of being global? Is there a specific R&D or product development cost that you can actually, the locals cannot do it? Is there something specific that you need to have the global players playing in? From what I see, I think the globals are going to be playing in markets like remittances because there is a lot about the cross-border transaction that is highly regulated. I don't see local players playing except as a local distribution channel. They might be playing in some markets through acquisitions that need a global infrastructure. But once you get into the local problems, lending, bill payment, and so on, the solutions are going to be local. It might be that a great company in Jordan will go and open in Saudi Arabia and Egypt because they have local knowledge in the market, or a great company in Egypt will go and open in 5, 6 other markets. But you're not going to see the global dominance unless maybe 10 years down the road, there might be a wave of consolidation through mergers that create those global platforms. But the regulators, I know that Amr is going to be looking at that, and in many places they're going to be blocking those types of acquisitions, but that's a kind of phase 2 or 3. So now for local players, look for a local problem based on local knowledge and build around it a great value proposition. And as Basil mentioned, simplify people's lives, make people's lives or SMEs' lives better, and you're going to have a great business. Fawry built a $1.2 billion business only in Egypt and only based on a simple use case. I'm going to make you stand in line, not stand in line, which makes everybody's life miserable. And you build $1 billion company based on that. Make people's life better, great value proposition, very deep local knowledge, and you're actually going to have great companies coming out of that region. When you go regional, look for companies that have similar culture and situations, understand them and get into them, but it's almost going to be like starting a new company. Back to you, Nadine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayman. Atilla, I know we have just a few minutes left, so I don't know if you want to comment on, what type of providers are actually going to succeed in building this sort of making people's lives better, very focused, great customer experience, or if you want to open it up at this stage.
Thank you, Nadine.
Back to you.
Thanks, Nadine. What kind of providers are going to succeed in the fintech space? Well, I hope the ones who are listening here today, and really, again, please join us in the hackathon over the next couple of weeks. To answer your question, Nadine, I think, in my humble opinion, I'd like to say first what is and what can be. So when it comes to what is, as a matter of fact, we know that, roughly speaking, there are 350 fintech solutions out in the Arab region, right? And so the majority in terms of number are sole or individual providers. So whereas, for example, 50% only, so this minority in terms of number is basically MNOs, banks, and other technology firms. So this is where the client base is, where the capital is, where the the data base is. But we have more innovation, so to say, in terms of number. And we also know that the first wave usually happens across the globe and as well in our region in payments, right? This is where you have first providers come in, less capital intensive business. So that's what is. What can be, in my humble estimation or opinion, is we to see a shift from payments to lending by the means of data. So harnessing data basically by those new providers, but also by new regulatory infrastructure that Ayman spoke about earlier today. So things like open banking regimes or digital banking frameworks. So there's a chance, a high likelihood that we see a shift from payments to banking. What I would like to see though is I would like to see those providers on both sides, the specialized focus providers, startups, and so on, and on the other hand, the incumbents working together. So I think there's good reason to see more collaboration, innovative collaboration between incumbents, corporates, and startups. And those who will be able to harness data and to build networks around social relationships and partner, I think, will be the ones to succeed, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. Thank you to the panelists quite a lot. And over to our FinTech Galaxy colleagues for answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Nadine, and everybody on the panel. That was fantastic. Definitely a very fruitful discussion and a lot of great information that was shared. I know we have 3 minutes till the top of the hour, so maybe we can squeeze in one question. And then what I promise the audience is I'll ask Melissa, my colleague, to share her email in the chat. And then if there are questions that didn't get answered, we'll actually follow up by email. So Melissa, if you want to have the question, the first one from, I believe, Khalid. If you want, Khalid, to turn on your microphone and your camera.
I think he got disconnected, so maybe we can skip to someone else who wants to ask.
Okay, sounds good. Who's the next on the list, Melissa?
So far, Eva was mentioning a couple of comments, but let me check if she's here. Eva?
Hi, actually, I'm Simon.
Oh, hello, Simon's
Yeah,
there.
no, that's all right. Go and have it. Go off you go. Go on.
No, I said, no, you go, Simon.
Yeah, we're hiding under two domains, as they say.
We're using the same name.
Yeah. So anyway, far more attractive than Simon as a name. So Eva. Yeah, I mean, one of my questions was regarding which I had a couple of comments, which was about obviously the ability to onboard people as well, the requirements in terms of legislation, KYCs, but that's quite a complex thing. But one thing I wanted to just ask maybe Nadine is about the World Bank. Quite a lot of statements recently about foundational identity, for basically for countries particularly that didn't have had a lot of unbanked, that was requiring that type of basis that a lot of us have been talking about. We can issue cards, but there's a lot of information behind that. It's about multiple touch out points for people to use it, for people to be in a system that then, and I totally agree with what was said as well about it's all very well having an interesting financial system, but how many times can people use it on a daily, regular basis for people who are not necessarily connected into the system? So I just wondered if you wanted to make a comment on World Bank's position on that, Nadine.
Well, let me answer that one very quickly because I cannot comment on the behalf of my World Bank colleagues working at CGAP. I mean, obviously, IDs have their importance. Yeah. And we're seeing more and more countries moving towards digital ID and that as a foundational element. And it will be an important element for digital financial services going forward. But I think we have now a decade-rich experience where we did not necessarily have those sort of systems, and we still had digital financial services. So I say, think future will play out. I don't know if we're going to take on another question if we're hitting the top of the hour, and I know some people have to leave.
Well, what I'm going to suggest is we'll end it here because I do also have other engagements right after this call. So Melissa has put her email address. It's melissa@fintech-galaxy.com. So any questions that you may have from the audience, please send it in the email and also indicate who would you like the question directed to in terms of our, who are on our panel, and we'll follow up. We'll get the answer and we'll get it back to you. So on that note, I actually want to say thank you so much for everybody for making the call. Again, it's an exciting opportunity. We're very much looking forward to seeing this being a huge success and actually having an impact and making a difference in the region. So thank you again, and everybody have a wonderful day. Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.